Hello, everybody. Today we are going to do a reading of a Bloomberg article that I was given access to, thankfully, through a colleague. So we have the full article here. It is authored by, I believe, Miss Aisha Gani. The title of the article is Revolut Founder is Building a Launch Pad for a 76 billion fortune. So we're going to read through it because I think it also serves as a great case study in this industry with the convergence of digital services. So let's jump into the article and then we'll take it from there because I really think that we could all learn a lot from this. I'll add a bit of commentary, but I really do think that so much to be said. So let's just go right to the article. And here we go. So let's just read through this and hopefully everybody can enjoy the show. Revolut founder is building a launch pad for a $76 billion fortune. So CEO Nick Storonsky turned a scrappy startup into a fintech juggernaut. Now he has to convince the world that his company is as safe as a bank. So here we go. In 2015, Nikolay Storonsky used about 500,000 he'd earned as a derivatives trader at Lehman Brothers and Credit Suisse to launch a startup intended to supplant the giants of global finance. We want to replace banks, simple as that, the former competitive swimmer said in a promotional video at the time. The 41-year-old hasn't yet succeeded in that aim, but the resulting company, Revolut Ltd, has the potential to hand him one of the biggest fortunes in the industry, around 76 billion in stock if he can pull off a near 200 billion initial public offering that the firm is aiming at within the next 2 years, a more than 15 million% return. While more than doubling Revolut's current 75 billion valuation is a big ask, the firm has gone in just over a decade from being a scrappy outsider to a fintech juggernaut with 75 million customers gunning to be the world's most popular financial brand. It offers mainstream banking and cheap overseas payments alongside artificial intelligence-assisted wealth management and the delights of crypto, all within a slick interface designed for Gen Z and millennials. JP Morgan Chase and Company Chief Executive Officer Jamie Dimon summed up Revolut's rise last month when speaking about its own UK operation. "I'm jealous, damn it," he said. "You watch these people, they move." The acceleration in the Revolut founder's wealth is reminiscent of Elon Musk's moonshot pay packages. It is an approach that will keep the hyper-focused founder dominant in the firm if he can achieve category-busting growth. "I don't spend all this money," Storonsky said during an interview with David Rubenstein for Bloomberg earlier this year. "I just continue to work on what's necessary to build the first global bank." Documents seen by Bloomberg detail the valuation thresholds that unlock extra ownership for Storonsky. By the time his company achieves the top end, that nearly $200 billion target, he'll have received more than 12 million special incentive shares on top of his existing 10.5 million ordinary shares in the company. Discussions around a subsequent package can be expected later this year, according to a person familiar with the matter. And we see here the value of the CEO's share in Revolut soars at increasing valuation. So Storonsky's stake could reach 76 billion if the company hits each valuation target. And there you go. We've got a nice visual here. At a certain valuation, he receives certain pay incentives. Okay, wow. Now, the extra shares have already pushed Storonsky's fortune to about 20.4 billion, making him the UK's richest person. Amazing. Wow, according to the Bloomberg Billionaire Index. The stock compensation plan would, if the future valuations are achieved, also catapult Storonsky into the top ranks of the richest people in finance, with wealth exceeding the current status of Citadel founder Ken Griffin or Blackstone Incorporated's CEO Steve Schwarzman. Storonsky's wealth and its prospective jump hinges on Revolut's valuation, which in turn is tied to a set of performance targets which few financial firms can emulate. It has barely any direct peers. Fintechs rarely offer its range of services, and banks generally have different balance sheets with all the regulation and capital needs that requires. The firm wants 10 100 million daily active customers across 100 countries, with Bloomberg Intelligence estimating that's achievable in the next couple of years. We think of Revolut's business as an all-in-one global software platform for financial services, said Brendan O'Boyle, sector head of financials and fintech at Coatue Management, which has invested in the company. As Revolut leans in and acquires licenses around the world, riding the momentum of recent success in the US, UK, it can launch broader product suites, build customer trust, and create a moat that's hard to replicate. Trust is something that mainstream banks have known how to win and lose. So, Revolut's future growth is increasingly pegged to more customers treating it like their main bank and regulators in dozens of countries being on board with that. Yet, Storonsky's dominance of Revolut and the extent to which the firm orbits around his leadership style underlines the firm's unusual profile in the banking world. Regulators, who are usually keen to see independent boards, strictly defined management roles, and evidence of a responsible corporate culture, have been confronted with a freewheeling firm that's much more like a tech startup than a big financial company. And some have reacted with unease. It's also landed in the crosshairs over money laundering and control weaknesses. Revolut has had to and will need to continue to prove to regulators that it has a governance framework that meets their expectations. It took 5 years for Revolut's application for a UK bank license to be finally granted this March, and its rollout in India took a similar length of time and only began onboarding customers in December. The risk for its investors now is that Revolut becomes an unwieldy global giant tangled in red tape, the opposite of the nimble antidote to mainstream banks that it's billed as being. Bloomberg spoke to more than 24 investors, regulators, executives, and people familiar with the firm for this article. Storonsky did not grant an interview. Revolut declined to comment on his compensation. Super app. Around 2013, Storonsky came to the conclusion that retail banks were ripe for disruption. Huge fees and markups for cross-border payments were an easy target to go after with a startup. The pitch was to allow customers to spend like a local with close to free transactions and then scale the business relentlessly. Revolut has begun to emulate the do-everything ethos of China's WeChat and the branding of Apple Incorporated products. Users can send money, trade stocks, and buy travel insurance or eSIMs. Any user can buy airport lounge access, while premium subscribers receive it along with complimentary subscriptions like services to ClassPass and Tinder. Okay, markets are targeted at breakneck speed, with Revolut assigning $13 billion for expansion, including its aim to enter 30 new countries by the end of the decade. This year, Revolut launched full banking operations in Mexico, its first outside Europe. Revolut is currently waiting on a green light for banking in the U.S., a gold mine market. Ultimately, the company wants to be present in China, the motherlode of mobile payments. All of the ambition comes with substantial backing and hype from the tech community. I am investing in your next round, Jensen Huang, CEO of NVIDIA Corp, announced to Revolut while on stage with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer last year. Revolut is an amazing story, he said. The perception of relentless growth is helping to support dizzying valuations for the firm, with the next milestone a private secondary sale of shares expected later this year at a valuation of at least $100 billion. To achieve north of $150 billion through an IPO, the firm needs to maintain a profit margin of around 25% while continuing to scale. According to Thomas Neutzel at Bloomberg Intelligence, improving revenue per customer, cost control, and margins give credibility to the investment case, he said. What in Bloomberg Intelligence says, Revolut has achieved a durable growth to profit pivot with about $6 billion of 2025 revenue and a net margin of nearly 30% as management pursues a 150 to 200 billion valuation. Key drivers are new product rollouts, deeper monetization, and UK-US banking licenses, though increased regulatory scrutiny might temper momentum. Thomas Neutzel, BI Senior Industrial Analyst. So, credit map. Yet, a payments and online brokerage firm can only go so far. The company's next act relies on credit, which its global chief banking officer Sid Jajodia says is a critical part of our roadmap. Revolut has about 2.2 billion pounds, or rather 3 billion USD, in consumer loans, mortgages, and credit card balances at the end of 2025, equivalent to just 6% of the deposits that its customers hold. Interest income accounted for about 22% of revenue, with a large chunk of that coming from returns on the U.S. Treasuries that it holds as a cash-like security for customer deposits. That is very impressive right there. Most of the rest comes from fees, inverse to the usual arrangement in banking. All right, the firm's valuation is much more in line with being a low-risk payments firm, higher than a riskier provider of credit would be. Revolut is explicitly focused on diversifying its sources of income, but it remains to be seen whether investor enthusiasm can be sustained through the transition to being a provider of consumer credit and mortgages, which are highly sensitive to interest rate changes and the economic cycle. Large banks typically have higher loan-to-deposit ratios. Yes, so Revolut's deposit growth has vastly outpaced its loan book. There you go. So loan-to-deposit ratio for 2025 financial year. You can see that Banco Santander is nearly 98%, so nearly 100% loan-to-deposit ratio for Banco Santander. Then you can see Deutsche Bank AG, which is technically Austria or perhaps Switzerland, not Germany, at 69.2%. And then you have UniCredit SPA in Italy at 82.6%. Then you have Barclays PLC at 74.3%, also in the UK. And then you have Revolut, which is only 6.2%. This is really just for those who can see this, just amazingly impressive numbers when you're talking about loan-to-deposit ratio. There you go. So Revolut is targeting to grow its loan-to-deposit ratio to double digits. All right. Jajodia said in New York ahead of the firm's application for a U.S. bank license. While a big change for Revolut, it's still far from the profile of a regular bank. The firm is going through a natural evolution toward more lending, particularly where markets like Mexico, Colombia, and the U.S. are driven by consumer credit card spending, Jajodia said. JP Morgan estimates that Revolut can increase interest income by around $70 million for every extra $1 billion it lends. Okay, that's an interesting math. JP Morgan estimates that Revolut can increase interest income by around $70 million for every extra $1 billion it lends. So they're increasing income of $70 million over $1 billion. All right. But doing so at scale may cause investors to recalibrate their valuation frameworks. Yes, indeed. Analysts John Hakunda and Lula Sheena wrote in April. So in theory, here we go. This is in theory, not in practice, in theory. This is where the academics love to live, in theory. So in the land of theory, the more Revolut lends, the more investors will stop treating it like a steady payments firm, affecting the price they're willing to pay for its shares. The firm's growth strategy could bring reach and diversification, but also materially increase regulatory and operational complexity, uncertainty, and risk, the JP Morgan analyst wrote, challenging its business model and management. Okay, so that was back in April from JP Morgan analysts John Hakunda and Lula Sheena. So thank you for that contrarian assessment. So where some observers see risk, others see a chance to multiply the sources of growth. If you look at the monster that is Revolut, they appeal to every market around the world because their services are so very diverse, said Hannah Dobson, who leads KPMG's UK FinTech team. Its stated ambition to move into mortgage markets, in particular core European countries including France, has already made incumbents take action. That's interesting. So Revolut operates in the euro area through a subsidiary in Lithuania, where it obtained a banking license in 2018 and began lending into the property market last year, which would be 2025. Revolut said this week that it's adding some 200 jobs in France, aiming for over 650 in the country by 2030. And we see here a basketball hoop at the Revolut offices in Paris. Regulators have been confronted with a firm that's much more like a tech startup than a big financial company. Now, Revolut's ambitions in big markets like France and Germany hinge on convincing regulators it has overcome concerns about weak controls on money laundering and cybercrime. So the European Central Bank currently imposes the bloc's highest capital buffer on the firm's unit in the European Union, reflecting unease about its rapid growth and risk oversight. The company has looked to address these perceived weaknesses, not least in bringing in its outsiders with deep expertise in the financial sector, starting with Chairman Martin Gilbert, former CEO of Aberdeen Asset Management, a host of regional chiefs in building credibility in target markets. So, Revolut has tapped former bankers to lead regional expansion. This is an interesting HR strategy. So, this is also an HR case study of taking, as we'll see here on this roster, okay, this wants to be a championship roster to host up the UEFA Trophy. They want to bring in some power players. So, many joined the fintech in recent years. So, Francesca Carlesi is the UK of CEO. Beatrice Cosa Dumurgier, CEO of Western Europe. Cetin Duransois, US CEO. Glauber Mota, Brazil CEO. Juan Miguel Guerra, Mexico CEO. Agustin Danza, Argentina CEO. Paroma Chatterjee, India CEO. Ambarin Musa, GCC CEO. And then Jacques Meyer, South Africa CEO. So represents a selection of Revolut senior global leadership, source Revolut and LinkedIn. So for Igal El Arar, global head of tech for BNP Paribas SA's equity capital markets business, Revolut investors are not doubting the path. So far, the market is buying the track record of having been able to grow without much risk, he said in an interview. Becoming a financial super app for any buyer of the stock, that's gold. Becoming a financial super app for any buyer of the stock, that is gold. Risk culture. On its path to being a super app, Revolut says it is onboarding almost 2 million new customers every month. A payments firm in particular needs to check that all of those new customers are who they say they are, also known as KYC, and have a good idea of where their money comes from. Okay, right? Knowing your sources. A number of blowups in the age of internet age payments firms, from Wirecard, right? We remember that one from 2020 to Worldline, shows that the sector is rife with money laundering risk, potential sanctions busting, and terrorism financing. There you go. So, shares in Wise Group PLC, a UK-listed payments firm, dropped as much as 19% on Monday after it emerged that it faced an investigation from authorities in Belgium over potential money laundering. Wise said that the request for information was not indicative of non-compliance with anti-money laundering requirements or of any wrongdoing. Now, Revolut has had its own cloud to dispel in this area. In 2023, the fintech announced that it had lost $20 million the previous year after a flaw in its U.S. payment system allowed criminals to siphon off funds. And in 2024, it faced a surge in fraud complaints in the UK, drawing regulatory scrutiny. At times, concerns over the firm's ability to control and defeat fraudsters using its platform appeared to dim its ambitions of becoming a mainstream bank in the UK. So the firm has thus taken pains to show it's on top of the risk. In February, Woody Malouf, head of financial crimes at Revolut, hosted regulators, law enforcement agents, control staff at banks, industry partners, and policymakers at its headquarters in London's Canary Wharf. So we've got Woody Malouf at the company's office in London. Hello, Woody. So he outlined that around 4,000 Revolut staffers are tasked to fight fraud at the firm, or about 1/3 of its global workforce. So 33% of the global workforce. So that means that if they have 4,000 that is fighting fraud, that means their global headcount is 12,000. And 33% is focused on tasked with fighting fraud, or at least part of their job description is fighting fraud. The star of the show was Revolut's AI-supported anti-money laundering platform, able to process transactions 12 times faster than a human. All right, so this is actually something where, of course, we at cryptodeposit.org, look, the AI tools are getting very, very good. So the key is if a bank wants to be nimble, if a bank wants to be lean, these neobanks, these super apps, it makes a lot of sense. So let's just keep reading the article, not get interrupted here. So the star of the show was Revolut's AI-supported anti-money laundering platform, able to process transactions 12 times faster than a human. So according to Malouf. this gentleman in the photo here. So he said the firm has invested over 25 million pounds in the product alone, excluding operation costs. Okay, of course, meaning server fees, maintenance, monthly bills, and has managed to cut fraud rates by 31% during a time when the firm added 20 million customers. So that's pretty good. Working with NVIDIA, Revolut has designed a range of models called Pragma, which helps understand the financial context of individual payments based on data including timing, device used, location, and other elements. The firm says the system isn't in production yet, but will contribute to an understanding of payment flows that goes beyond what rule-based approaches can do. An internal system named Karma also links staff pay to how much their departments prioritize risk management and compliance, making it a company-wide priority. Not for everyone. Revolut is known in the industry for paying above market compensation and being more demanding as an employer than almost anyone else. Storonsky, himself a graduate of the Moscow Institute of Physics and Technology, has created a culture where Wall Street's long hours collide with the tech industry's love for targets and metrics. Though Revolut has strengthened its attention to controls, interviews with current and former staff suggest long-standing criticisms over the firm's work's atmosphere remain at least partially valid. Human financial crimes teams located in multiple countries including India, Brazil, and Poland still handle complex cases but face strict productivity targets including active time monitoring. And okay, yeah, so that could be certainly a headache for a lot of people. This is a metric that maybe with bigger companies, they're policing your laptop, they're checking out what's going on with your devices, all that good stuff. So that's one of the backfalls of the drawbacks of being with some of those larger firms. But hey, it's coming to a small firm near you soon. The practice has been perceived as creating a surveillance-heavy environment that employees say favors speed over judgment. For sales teams, employees have referred to naming and shaming on Slack if the standard of 60 touch points a week are not met. Okay. For sales teams, employees have referred to naming and shaming on Slack if the standard of 60 touch points a week are not met. 60 touch points would be interesting to understand how you measure that metric in the sales department. Okay, Storonsky himself has 40 direct reports. That's interesting. Would be nice to see their organizational chart. And he refers to his top staff as self-guided missiles. Okay, that's interesting choice of words. He has espoused Jeff Bezos' famous two-pizza rule. Teams should be kept small enough so that the two could feed everyone. 2 pizzas could feed everyone on that team. Internal calls are expected to be 15 minutes, and the firm's culture still prioritizes decisive meetings rather than losing time socializing or catching up. Actually, in this regard, internal calls are expected to be 15 minutes. I think the majority of people, on both the people asking for the internal calls and the people on the receiving end and joining those calls, might agree with that. The 15 minutes, get to it. No need to drag it to a half hour or an hour call. And then the firm's culture still prioritizes decisive meetings, right? Meaning calls, in person, whatever, rather than losing time socializing or catching up. Yeah, most companies would argue you can do that in the lunch hour, or perhaps do that on the weekend. Or in Europe, of course, they get a million holidays in Europe, so catch up during that time. The company has in the past decorated its walls with slogans including "Get SH*T done." All right, so the photo here really drives home that point. Their office is using actually mid-level chairs. I would want to have headrest on those chairs, perhaps. A bit more ergonomic. Nice tables, pretty standard. Carpeted floors, not too bad. Open ceiling, so you don't have those false ceiling tiles. It's better to have open ceiling, actually. Easier for HVAC and maintenance. Okay, so targets are reviewed every 3 months. So, okay, quarterly. A rhythm more common in tech than finance. And it's not uncommon for people to fail an initial probation period. That's interesting. So high targets mean the retention rate is seen as poor. And while managers are tracked on attrition, no exact figures are available. Storonsky has said in the past that mistakes were made, but that the firm is still on a journey. Okay, so this is an interesting section here. I want to reread this because I really want to extract the value of what's being said here. Targets are reviewed every 3 months. So what they're saying here is that a rhythm more common in tech than finance. So that what it's inferring here is that finance doesn't do quarterly reviews, but maybe perhaps half-year reviews or once-a-year reviews. So yeah, a rhythm more common in tech than finance. And tech is probably moving more towards even more frequently. Some of the newsletters that I'm signing up for, there's reviews perhaps monthly. or along that line if you have small sort of scrum teams. So high targets mean the retention rate is seen as poor, which means that people are coming and going. They're hired, they're joining the team, and if they don't hit targets right away, they're out the door sooner rather than later. And while managers are tracked on attrition, okay, so that means that if you are a manager of that team, they're going to be measuring, your superiors are going to be measuring you on what is the attrition rate of your team. No exact figures are available. Okay, well, that makes sense. If they're not a public company, then they don't have to maybe disclose that just quite yet, at least maybe to their VCs, their other investors. So Storonsky has said in the past that mistakes were made, but that the firm is still on a journey. Well, it's certainly still on a journey. It's on a journey to IPO within the next 2 years, as noted earlier in the article. So regardless of such perceptions, competition to enter Revolut also remains strong. The firm says it received some 1.7 million job applications in 2025, with the current headcount of 12,000. Okay, so Revolut is a high-achieving culture built around exceptional people who want to do their most ambitious work. In T-shirts, okay, they have two guys in T-shirts here. So Revolut said in a statement, transparency about goals, performance, and how we operate is core to who we are. It's an environment that isn't for everyone, and we don't pretend otherwise. Our culture is designed to support and cultivate people to do their best work. In the current headquarters, the get the SH asterisk T done signs are gone. Okay, so that means this photo is now, those signs are gone. Get it done. In the past, Storonsky has been known to meet regulators wearing casual clothes, but there also things are changing. This year, the founder will likely be spending more time meeting officials in the U.S. as it chases a banking license. In his interview with Rubenstein, Storonsky nodded to the need to pay attention to established norms. I think I'll definitely have to wear a suit, he said, of meeting with regulators. Wonderful. Great article by Aisha Gani. I hope that there is some comments. I would say in summary from this article, we can really extract several things. So if you have a business sense, what really captured me in this article was the focus on the 2-year target, 2-year target to do an IPO. Okay, so for people that are saying, if you put yourself in the shoes of this founder, as it notes right up front, he had worked for many years in Lehman Brothers before they collapsed in September of 2008. And then somewhere after September 2008 up through 2015, he was at Credit Suisse. And then, of course, in 2015, he used $500,000 he'd earned to launch what would, of course, be known as Revolut. And here we are in 2026. So after 11 years, the company has still not gone public. That's still 1 or 2 years out. And then the next part of the article talks about his potential targets. Okay, so if he's able, as you see here, to get the valuation up to 200 billion, as opposed to, let's say, where it was at 75 billion, he got 20 billion himself. If the company valuation went to 79 billion, he'd be at 24 billion. And then, of course, you can see that if he hits the nearly 2 billion target, he will be at nearly 76 billion. Okay, so this is really stepped up, as you see there. So that's something that is explicit. If there's other shareholders, there's VCs, they want to incentivize the CEO to hit these targets as they build the valuation. So after 11 years, they still have a 12-month to 24-month target to basically go from somewhere in the middle of this chart to over here. So if they were currently at 100 to 150, and then maybe ideally up to 200. So they're striving from 100 to 110 to go all the way up to 150 to potentially 200 at the higher end of the IPO, whenever that may happen. And then in the middle part of the article here, we're talking about peers, meaning Jamie Dimons and all the other folks, some of the investors, such as Koa Tue, right? Large investors, perhaps across many rounds, many series. And then we get a little bit further into the article, and we talk about basically what is Revolut? Is it a bank? Is it a all-in-one app? What are their weaknesses? Money laundering, etc. Banking licenses, right? The super app, what it is, what it isn't. It's really, of course, a great sign to see that excuse me, Jensen Huang and NVIDIA are going to be N Ventures. N Ventures is their venture unit. They will be investing. So that, I mean, that's really a great blessing. A lot of wind in their sails to have that sort of seal of approval. But of course, it's helping Jensen Huang because NVIDIA is providing a lot of the tools, as you will find out a little bit later in this article. So this article is really, really quite comprehensive. It's a great read. I want to thank one of my colleagues at cryptodeposit.org for allowing me to have access to this article. And with that being said, I think we can also derive from here, as you can see in this part, what traditional banks do as with this loan to deposit ratio, how that affects valuations, okay, when you're a shareholder, retail, or of course large folks when it comes to some of these analysts, as we read, John and Lula, who are from JP Morgan. Really, really exciting stuff. And then KPMG's Hannah Dobson also comments. So many good sources talking about the licenses, where they're going, market expansion, global expansion. This article really has it all. HR, who they're hiring to manage various departments, various regions. The risk culture, and then summarizing with compliance, and then HR. So the last part of the article is really again talking about internal company culture, which for some people is maybe not necessarily a strong focus, but I think that company culture really does stem from the CEO. We've seen that over and over. So this has been a long journey. I think that people need to again put themselves in the shoes of the founder and CEO, Mr. Storonsky, because again, as it mentioned in this article, if he were to take $500,000 and then get to a 200 billion valuation, that's a more than 15 million% return. Not too bad, okay? And he's getting potentially up to 76 billion of that 200 billion just for himself. So the company has a 200 billion valuation, but he's entitled to 76 billion of the 200 billion if it gets to the higher end in their pursuit of an IPO. So this article, just really a very comprehensive read. It's a great case study. Would love to see in the months ahead how this shapes up, how the IPO train leaves the station, where it will be listed. Will it be listed in the UK or the US or perhaps multiple places? Great article. So want to congratulate the author of this story, Aisha Gani, again, for great read. Hopefully everybody has taken something from this read. Hopefully people enjoy the few editorial comments that I have provided. These are just simply a few notes from somebody that is dealing with startups and helping build companies over time. So cryptodeposit.org is a not necessarily a direct competitor to Revolut, but there's a lot of overlap. Let's just say that. So it's good for us over here to really be standing on the shoulders of giants and understand the journey of other people, because you can see in articles like this what they've gone through. And with that being said, I just want to leave it there for now. I really enjoyed this article. I would love to do more like this, so if you guys do end up stumbling upon this video and you've made it to this point, please like, subscribe, whatever. Please even offer up to daily, we can go through a deep dive on a Bloomberg article or similar, because I really enjoyed this type of real-time assessment of a company's journey from the earliest stages to the potential listing stages. This article addresses really exciting stuff. So thanks again, everybody, and we will stop the video here and see you on another video soon. And thanks for visiting our YouTube channel and sharing with other folks in case they may take interest in what we offer at cryptodeposit.org with our stablecoin and other digital asset solutions. Have a good day, everybody, and talk again soon.